All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Nick of Time podcast. We have a very, very special episode for you today. Me and my doggy, she can't get enough of the attention. But yes, before we start the episode, I just want to give a shout out to two of my sponsors. One of them is actually on the podcast today, but the first one would be my boy Jordan Irizarry with Evolve. He's probably one of the best personal trainers I think I've ever seen, like personally. Now, there's a lot of people out there that claim the road to fame and know what they're doing, but this guy really, I've seen it hands-on. He's changes people's lives. So if you're looking for a lifestyle change or looking to compete in bodybuilding, Evolve with Izzy. This is Instagram. And connect you with that. Second sponsor and the owner, I guess, owner of, sorry. See, look, this is my dog. My dog's usually more calm, but my dog's even excited about
She's
you.
Excited today.
Yeah, Double R Hat Company. Shout out to Gabe Rodriguez, who just happens to be our guest on the podcast today. Gabe, you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Like you said, Gabe Rodriguez. Started Double R Hat Company. I was born and raised Odessa, Texas. We're West Texas boys right here. That's basically it right there.
That's enough for me, man. That's enough for me.
Air Force guy.
Yep. Where you stationed out at right now?
So right now I'm stationed up Cannon, New Mexico, or Clovis, New Mexico, Cannon Air Force Base. I'm an honorary New Mexican at this point. I feel like I should be. I've been in New Mexico for about 6 going on 7 years, all over. So Albuquerque started it off at Kirtland Air Force Base. Got shipped down here about 2 years ago to Clovis, Eastern New Mexico. And then I got tasked for a deployment, a humanitarian mission to Alamogordo, New Mexico. So I've been all over New Mexico for the Air Force, so I should be an honorary New Mexican at this point, I feel like.
It's so funny, man. And not to rub it in, but it's just so funny how one person can join the Air Force and like the paths we're taking go completely opposite directions. Like you stayed in New Mexico, they sent me on a plane to Korea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I went Korea to Germany, then Germany to Turkey, and then back to Texas. But dude, that's insane how they managed to keep you in that box.
Yeah, I'm confined in New Mexico.
How funny, man. Yeah, man. So let's get into a little bit. So you obviously are from Odessa, man. I know you're a few years older than me. Talk to me about your childhood, man, your upbringing. How was it as a kid growing up in Odessa?
So I would say I grew up middle class. Dad was a fireman, EMT. Mom was a preschool teacher. So grew up middle class, grew up West Odessa. Grew up loving sports, played sports since I was 3. That's when I started playing t-ball. Grew up loving sports, man. Dad pushed me into the sports world. Just growing up, you know how it is in West Texas, home of the Friday Night Lights. Like you're born to play sports. If you're not playing sports, you're basically not doing anything in that town. That's all it's about in that town. So grew up playing baseball, basketball, football, of course. Growing up on the west side, it's a lot different than the east side, right? You got Odessa High versus Permian. So you're growing up, you dreamed of putting on that red and white on the west side, and then you're getting coached by a bunch of like tough old school grown man cowboys, right? So
basically
some of the toughest guys coached me. I grew up with their kids. They all rode bulls, roped. They were all in the rodeo scene. So I feel like at that point my life could have went 2 ways. I could have went sports or the rodeo scene because those were the kids I was hanging out with. So ended up choosing the sports world and just ran with it. Went all the way to high school. Walked on at Odessa College, played baseball for a little bit. So, and then you know how it is getting raised that way. Like you're raised to not show emotion. You're not raised to show weakness. It's that old school tough love. So
Yeah, man. So one thing I will say, right? You talk about sportsmanship, how big it is. Like, I remember joining the Air Force, and especially like when I started like getting closer to like good supervisions and good mentors and stuff. And they asked me like, where do these skills come from, and like, work ethic and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're not gonna believe it, but I'm telling you, like 95% of everything I've ever learned is just off playing sports. You
Yeah,
know what I
man.
mean? When it comes to like work ethic and
Yeah.
achieving a common goal and stuff like that. And it's people don't get it. You try
Yeah.
to explain, how important it is as far as like where we're from in our child development, because I think without that competitive aspect, not that it can be done, but it's so much harder to really stand out, you know,
Yeah. I
as
agree.
as especially as a man, you know, if you don't have those like those skills to be able to, one, not only work hard, because you can work hard and work like, I guess, blindly. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Work hard,
So
work with a purpose, and be able to know, like, where you're trying to get to and whatnot. So
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
man.
like I take pride in where I come from, especially probably more now since I joined the military. And you're exposed to like so many different people that came from different parts of the country who didn't grow up like we did, right? So I take
Yeah.
joining the military really made me take even more pride of where I come from, like because we're raised different. I feel like
Oh yeah,
West
for
Texas is its
sure.
own world, man. So you
and
got your own
and
set of people. It's its own world.
and to add on to that, I think people don't realize that, like you said, it's its own world, but there's also so much good in it. People that
Hmm.
are there that have never left, they just kind of sulk in it. But like, I
Yeah.
remember leaving, right, getting on a plane, 18 hours away, by plane, and being in Korea, and I was just like, you get homesick and all this stuff, and you
Hmm.
really you really don't realize what you have. A lot of times it's easy to take things for granted. But like you said, every time I came home, I would be so excited, and not just because of my family, because of people, right? Because this is the place that made me, and now I
Yep.
get to go, come back, celebrate with family, and then go spread where I'm from in a totally different country,
Yeah.
or new place, or
Yeah.
whatever the case, et cetera, et cetera. So that's super cool, man. So Odessa, born and raised. Talk to me a little bit about what made you decide to join the Air Force, because we joined the Air Force around the same time, and I'm
Yeah.
very curious.
I joined a lot later. So
Yeah,
I joined at 25.
yeah,
So amongst my peers within like going through basic and going through tech school, I was one of the oldest, if not the oldest, in each flight that I was attached to. So kind of going back to why I joined. So coming out of high school, like of course you want to go play sports, right? That's like the main common goal. Like get out of town, go try to make something of myself in the sports world because that's what I was so interested in and passionate about. But so I never got that opportunity. I was offered a walk on at Odessa College to play baseball. And during summer workouts, I ended up tearing my hamstring. And it wasn't a it was a complete tear. Like
yeah,
my hamstring bruised from down past my knee all the way up my back. So tried rehabbing that back to try to make the season and going out for practice and stuff. I ended up pulling it because it wasn't completely healed yet.
yeah.
So at that point, and like a little bit of my story. My junior year of high school, I had a slip disc and a bulging
Mm,
disc, and it took me out half my junior season. You
yep.
know, for football, and junior season that's your most important year for recruiting. So I think that kind of like tore me down mentally when it came to injuries because I hate being injured. To this day, I still hate being injured.
For sure.
And after that, I was like, okay, I'm done. Sports is not my thing. I'm done with sports. Like it's obviously not working out for me. So I ended up getting a really good job. Uh, working. So part-time, I was working with the Odessa American as a collector. And if y'all don't know, that's the local newspaper in Odessa. So I ended up getting a single copy manager's job. So basically, that's going around town, making sure each display is good, the store's getting the correct amount of papers they're supposed to have, they're making their payments on time, stuff like that. And I just remember sitting in that office one day. I'm on the computer just checking the stats for each store, making sure everything's good. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is not where I want to be in 5 years, 10 years. This is not the lifestyle I want. And mind you, I was young, I was still immature, but this is not where I saw my life in 10 years in the future. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, there's nothing in this town at that point in my life, in that town, there's nothing there for me. I still have my family, right? I still have my really good friends, but I was not progressing as a human, right? So I was like, there's a better calling, there's something better out there for me. And the military was always something there in the back of my mind that I was interested in, I wanted to be a part of. So I didn't talk to anybody about it. I went to the recruiting station in the mall. First branch I talked to was the Army. The recruiter was prior airborne. He was like, showed me all of his pictures, all the deployments he went on, all the cool stuff he did. And I was like, man, that's awesome. This is like the type of stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
So, talking to him, next branch I went to were the Marines. Went and talked to the Marines. He told me his whole spiel. I was like, okay, I could see myself doing this too. I knew I wasn't going to join the Navy. I don't want to spend my life on the water. That I know they go to awesome places, but I did not want to live on a ship for months on end as a deployment. So I never went and spoke to the Army or the Navy. And then the last branch I talked to was the Air Force. So I didn't know much about the Air Force. I knew pilots were involved, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I knew about the Air Force job wise was pararescue. I mean, that's the Gucci job in the Air Force, right? And then they had, at the time, there's a documentary on Discovery following it's to save others or something like that. So
Yeah,
others
I've
may
seen
live
it.
or something. Yeah. So that's how I knew about pararescue, and I was like, that's an awesome job. So I went and tried to get information on it. And recruiter, security forces.
Yeah,
So
Sergeant Humphreys.
there's a little insight right
I
there.
remember
Sergeant
him.
Humphreys, there you go.
Yeah, I remember him vividly.
Humphreys. So going in there, I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I want to do pararescue. So he gave me like the rundown, told me I had to do a pass test, such and such. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going Air Force. I'm doing Air Force. Was getting all the paperwork ready, getting all that stuff done, getting ready for my pass test, and threw my ass in the pool. And that's when I knew I was not going to be a pararescue medic. there was no way in hell, like, because you have to do like a 500-meter swim. I think it's a 50-meter underwater swim or 25-meter underwater swim, something like that. I was like, there's no way. And he was saying like their 8-week doc is mainly pool work. And I was like, cross that one off, but I'm not going to survive in a pool. Like, I'm good. There's no way. The only time I went swimming was sitting in a pool with a beer. That's me. So I was like, yeah, I'm good. There's no way I would survive that. So Tech Sergeant Humphreys, security forces, he's like, I'll show you the next best thing that's close to it. I was like, all right, security forces. He showed me like all the Dagger stuff, all the Raven stuff.
Yeah.
He showed me the awesome videos of them kicking doors down, clearing rooms and stuff. And I was like, I'll do that. He's like, and when you're not doing this stuff, you're a cop. I was like, oh, that's not bad at all. I can do that, because I was interested in doing the PD thing with the fire department in Odessa anyway. I was like, oh yeah, sign me up for that. So that's what I ended up choosing. Looking back at it now, I don't regret it at all. Like I've enjoyed my time in it, but going through basic and stuff, so I joined at 25, and I was definitely the oldest. I had one other guy who ended up becoming like one of my best friends, and we ended up going to Kirkland together, and we're suite mates in the dorms and stuff, and roommates when we got out. But he was a year older than me when he joined, and he like, I still don't know why. His name Zach Day from Miami, Florida. Dude has his bachelor's degree, went and played football, has a championship ring, like did the whole thing, but decided to go enlisted because his brother was Army. So that's one of my crazy, best friends. Man.
Yeah. So that's a lot to dissect there, man. So you join, right? And then after you join, I remember this vividly. Tell me if you remember this. Because, you know, after you go through basic military training, for everyone out there listening, then you go to technical training, which is like your job training for security forces. And I'll never forget this because I had no idea that you joined, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like out processing for my, like, to go to Korea. I have like, it's like my second to last day. And I see you pulling up to your first like week, like SAT week, right? Yeah. And it was your first week of tech school. I was like, dude, what are the odds that like we cross paths literally like in the hallway? You know what I mean? And then that's when I knew. I was like, dude, he's gonna go on to do like great things, you know? And I'll never forget that till the day I die, because it was right before Christmas and I was getting ready to graduate, and I was just like, dude, I'm so ready. Because tech school was a lot of memories, but there was a lot of BS doing that, you know?
I agree with that.
So yeah, for sure.
But I do remember seeing you. We ended up crossing paths that first week. And I remember talking to you like briefly before I had to go back into our little briefing room, but just asking you how tech school actually was and how freedom was. So I wasn't acclimated to freedom yet.
Yeah, and the weapons part, I think I've talked about this on other podcasts, but the weapons for me, that was like the most stressful time of my life. You know what I mean? Because like I had shot like a Glock before, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. And it wasn't even actual shooting; it was the nomenclature, right?
Yep, yeah, I agree. Like, cause I was fine with handling weapons, like shooting weapons, but I've never like broke weapons down like that technically before, and having to put them back together, and then you got like cadres sitting there watching you, and they're like looking at their watches and stuff, and like, that was a stressful. That was a stressful time.
And we had the coolest Cadam dudes, right? They were like, yeah, this is how you do this, you know, breakdown, function check, all this stuff, you know, M9. Yeah. And then he was like, just make sure y'all study while you're at lunch. And luckily I did. But then we came back in and they were so nice. You know what I mean? They were like a little too nice. And then we come back from lunch, right? And they're like, back of the room. People are like, you know what I mean? Failing these progress checks. So they're like, hey, do a function check and do that. And like I'm like shitting bricks because I'm like, dude, I know I did this right. And then like one of the old heads, the Navy retired guys, he like taps on my like table and he's like, everybody from this table get up. Y'all failed. And I didn't get up. I was like, I know I did it right. And then he's like, he looks at me, he's like, he looks at my gun. And I think they didn't put it on fire or something like that. Yeah. And mine was on fire. And they're like, okay, you're good. You stay down. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm gonna stay down. Yo, I've been studying. What do you mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's crazy. So you go through tech school, you finally finish, then you get orders to Kirkland, right? Which is in New Mexico. Okay. How do you take that news, and how do you go about that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So when I found out, there's only a handful of us that went to Kirkland. So the rest of them went all to Minot, North Dakota, middle of nowhere, for people who don't know. So I was thankful. I was so thankful. I'm not going to be in the freezing cold. I'm not going to be up north in the middle of nowhere. Like I know where Albuquerque is.
Yeah.
And I am good with that. I was like, there's a college there. There's going to be sports. They got a baseball team there. I was like, this is going to be a time. It's a big city. So, and my one of my buddies Zach Day that I just talked about, he ended up getting there also. So once me and him found out that we were going together, we were like, oh yeah, this is perfect. This is perfect. So we ended up getting to Kirtland finally, and he got there before I did. He was like, hey, there's another guy coming from my team, tech school team. He's like, is there any way we can be suite mates? And so he got us the hookup for being suite mates while we were there. And it was a good time. I enjoyed Albuquerque. I met some of the best people. I still communicate with those people today. We're actually, it was a group of us, a group of 5, and we're actually next month going to Florida for a trip just to reignite.
Okay.
So, yeah,
That's dope.
so
Yeah. I love to hear that, man. So you get to Kirkland, spend some time there. And then obviously you end up at Cannon, which is still in New Mexico.
yeah.
Yeah, man, there's a lot to dissect here. So I'm thinking about like how I want to go about this. But one thing that everybody knows about this podcast is we talk about mental health and how, all that stuff is pretty important. Talk to me about how you get to Clovis and your next step after Kirkland. Talk to me about that journey.
So getting to Clovis. So some people do know, some people don't know. I was married prior. So got there with my wife at the time. And so Clovis was a BOP for me, which is funny. People laugh at me, but it was actually a BOP, which for people who don't know, it's a base of preference. So you get a list and you put down.
Was that to be closer to Odessa?
That was part of it. That was part of it. So
okay.
I had a list of 8 CONUS bases, and that was number 8 on my list.
Okay, I got
of course, of course. Yeah, so you know how the Air Force works. So that was number 8. Ended up getting it, and I had to re-enlist for those orders. I couldn't extend since they were BOP orders, and I was so close to my contract being up that we had to re-enlist. So I ended up re-enlisting for 4 more years to go there, which I was optimistic about it. Like I had a good feeling about. It was I know the base was smaller. It's an AFSOC base, so the mission's gonna be fun. It's a small base. I'm used to a giant base. Like Kirtland had like 8 gates. This base has 2, so that's a big downshift right there for me. And I was already excited by that because Kirtland on the law enforcement side was a extremely fast-paced base. And I learned so much job-wise from Kirtland that I knew I was going to be great. Like they were going to love me at Cannon. So like I was going there with a line number for staff. Me and my wife both at the time, we were going there as staff selects. So they were already excited about that. I had already knew a lot of the leadership there because some of those members that were part of the leadership came from Cannon. So I already had a master sergeant down there who was already giving us information, and like he took over our sponsorship because he knew us. So he was already giving me the rundown how flight was, how flight's gonna be. Like he was like, I'm trying to pull you to my flight already. Like and he ended up pulling both of us to his flight. So and first day I get there, in process, right? You go through phase 1 and try to get acclimated to the base. And the second reason I put Cannon down was for the Dagger program. So I was interested in trying to be a part of that program. So I'm like asking questions like, how do I get involved with this? I end up running into a Dagger while I'm phase, and he kind of gives me some information on it. So I'm going through it. He's like, yeah, we're gonna have a tryout here soon. I think it was in February, like end of February. We got there about January of 2020, into January. So I'm getting ready for, like, I'm trying to prep my stuff for this tryout. It ends up getting canceled because of snow. Like it
Yeah.
snows, like heavy snow.
Real quick, can you explain for the people that don't know what a Dagger is in depth, basically, so they'll have a little bit of background of what you're training for?
So these guys are, so AFSOC is a spec ops base, a special operations base, and these guys are like specialized cops in our career field who get attached to the aircraft who hold those like spec ops dudes during missions. So they're security for the aircraft and deployed locations, stuff like that. So you go through a intense kind of training. They want fitter, like better mentally prepared people, like mature people. So they kind of weed out a week in these tryouts. I think the tryout was like a 6-mile ruck with 35-pound pack. So PT tests, stuff like that, just to know you're prepared to get sent off to the school, which is 2 months long. So you go through, I ended up going to like the pre-Dagger, what they sent them through first in Herbert Field, Florida. And I was blessed enough to get to go to that. But so that course is a month long. And then right after that course, they flow into the Dagger selection course, that pipeline. And that's what that tryout's for, to see if you're prepared enough to get to that course. So I was prepping for that. It ended up snowing like 5 inches, I think, that day. So they ended up canceling that. And after that, the chief was like, yeah, we're just going to go AMS. We're not going to do in-house tryouts anymore. So that timing kind of like diminished everything that I was prepping for. So I ended up getting a flight. I was on flight for, I want to say 3 to 4 months. Like, didn't even get a tour of the base, dude. I got stuck stuck me right at BDOC. They're like, you're gonna be BDOC. I was like, perfect. I gotta be in a game again.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, BDOC, it's Base Defense Operations Center. You're basically the
dispatcher.
Yeah, you're the dispatcher. You kind of control everything that happens on base, law enforcement wise or incident wise, anything that happens on base, it goes through you. So, and I was a BDOC controller at my last base, and that flight chief, and he was like, yeah, you're going to be my BDOC controller now here. So doing that, didn't even know the streets, couldn't even tell you where the shop it was, anything. Like, I had no idea. And just the difference in like how bases operate is insane. So this was like slow paced, everything. It was something I wasn't expecting, or I knew it was going to be that way, but I didn't know it was going to be as slow as it was. Like I was used to running around with my hair on fire for 8 hours.
Yeah. Well, I'm just
sitting there.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but it was real similar to me, man, because I was in Korea, right? And I worked nights in Korea. Obviously, you probably heard horror stories about how soju and people acting crazy. So I was used to like no kidding, I'm not exaggerating, bro. Like nobody could drive except for Master Sergeant above. But at 10 o'clock, the gate would close because there was a curfew at the time. So nobody was driving on the base. People had to walk, and they were all drunk. So on a regular like weekend at work, I would like be tackling people, you know what I mean? And like arresting them.
Hey, that's fun though.
And it was fun. And I went from that to like Spangdahlem, which is a small base in Germany. It's not Ramstein, working nights. And in Germany at nighttime, everything closes. Like, yeah, you have clubs, but like, you know, like we were in like rural, like farmland area, you know? So I went from like, we're you know, action Jackson to like it just everything just slowed down. So I hear you on that, man. So BDOC controller, right? You're stuck in the box.
Yep.
And I guess this is probably where things kind of like start to take a toll, and maybe things change in a different direction. I know one thing about the podcast I try to highlight is mental health. especially like
Mhm.
men's mental health, right? So talk to me about some things that may have been starting to affect that, while you're in this new job, got the marriage going, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to me about your mental health state at this point.
Yeah, so at this point, I was expecting to do the Dagger thing, so that was already a blow to me, right? That's one of the reasons why I came to this space. Uh, I was burnt out as a dog controller. Like you know how this job is. This job can burn
Mm,
you out very fast. I was definitely burnt out. There's so much stress on the beat out controller just for that job. There's so much stress. Everybody's relying on you. There's people coming to you for everything because you're supposed to be the SME.
yeah,
Uh, you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to know how paperwork's supposed to be finished. You're supposed to know how water's supposed to be done. You're training people. You're trying to do your job. You're trying to keep up with yourself. Flight chiefs are coming to you. Like it you out. There's so much stress, and I was over it. Like I was over being. I was ready for something else, and I feel like I would take that home at times, and like I always preach to people who come to me for like advice, like troops and stuff. Like we're not perfect. We're imperfect human beings. We're not capable of being perfect. We're always going to have flaws. We're always going to be. We're always going to have those days where we don't want to do anything. We're going to feel
yeah,
sorry for ourselves. So I always tell people, and I I've been starting lately. I've been starting to take my own advice finally, and that's take everything one step at a time. Like you can't don't overwhelm yourself. Take it all one step at a time. And like I ended up, and I pre timing's everything, right? So if one thing doesn't work out, there's always going to be another door that opens. So, and that door opened for me, and that was the investigations. They put out a job hire. I applied. I ended up getting it, and that's where I'm sitting now. I'm an investigator for our unit, and I've been enjoying it since. But going back to like that mental health stuff, man, like I ended up so Christmas time, it was like early December. I got tasked. So we were supposed to deploy, me and my
okay.
wife at the time, we were supposed to deploy, and we were tasked to deploy and to the Middle East. So we were trying to mentally prepare ourselves for that. Like one being deployed. This is our first. This would have been our first deployment ever. So trying to mentally prepare for that. Mentally prepare like what are we going to do with all of our belongings, our animals, our house. Like
Yeah, it's a big thing. People don't
yeah,
realize, being gone
it's
like
a huge thing, and that was a huge stressor in our life too. Like it was a so we found that out probably mid 2021. I want to say like September timeframe. So we were stressing, and my wife at the time, she was stressing too. Like she didn't know how it was going to be, like how this would affect us. Like I was just trying to stay positive. Like, yeah, we're going to deploy. It's going to be fine. We're going to be together. We're trying to like encourage positivity in both of our lives, saying like, yeah, we're going to do this together. This is going to be just an experience.
yeah.
So we get to December timeframe, and like mind you, we were like going through this pre-deployment training, like we're getting all the weapon certs for pre-deployment training, like stuff like that.
There's a lot going on.
And there's a lot going on in our lives right now, and like just trying to figure out like our belongings, our animals, like what's going to happen, vehicles, like uh and it gets to December timeframe, like beginning of December. uh I get pulled into a meeting with the commander, and there's a like two teams of people in there, probably like 24 people deep. And I'm like, oh, what's about to happen? And he's like, commander won't even sit down. This commander that I had is one of the best commanders I've ever had in my career.
Yeah.
Top two, easy. and he won't even sit down. Like you can tell like there's something wrong with his face. And he's like, I hate to do this to all of y'all sitting in this room right now, but uh, uh, so Big Air Force came down from Big Air Force. We had to send teams to Holloman Air Force Base. They needed 2 teams sent to Holloman Air Force Base for a humanitarian mission. And that's for everything that went on in Afghanistan, all those refugees coming back to the States, getting dispersed to different bases around the world. So at Holloman in Alamogordo, New Mexico, they had probably about 7,000 to 8,000 refugees there in a camp. So they're like, they were needing more people. We sent one team probably in October timeframe, and they were waiting for more from our base. And I ended up getting tasked. So, and like that was a huge blow right there. Like we had leave plan to go back to see my wife at the time, her family for Christmas. That was going to be our vacation for the year, and I wasn't able to go. We were out the door a week later from being notified. Yeah,
that's the military.
Yeah, we were out the door a week later. They're like, prepare for 6 months, but it could be earlier. They couldn't even give us a deadline to when we would be back. So they're like, packed for 6 months, and that day we started out processing. Like that was a blow to that was a huge blow to me mentally. Like you don't expect to be pulled out of your family that fast. I never thought that. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like I'm already tasked for deployment. Like I'm not gonna be touched. And I got pulled for it. So, and I was the team lead. Like, so everybody was looking to me for answers. I was like, this is my first deployment. Like this is my first time being a team lead for anything. So just the amount of stress on that alone was insane. And so we're trying to get out processed. We're like pulling weapons, getting our weapons ready. We're getting our gear bags ready. We're like prepped for like to be out in a week. So we end up get sent off. We go to Holloman. We're living in tents, mind you. We're stateside living in tents. So good times.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, good times.
That's funny.
Yeah, called it Tent City. We get there. It was I got to meet a lot of awesome people. Like it was a good time, but just knowing like I'm away from my family, like it's Christmas time, it's the holidays, right? Like just knowing that I couldn't be there with my wife and with her family, like I'm FaceTiming and stuff, and during Christmas and like trying to say hi to everybody. I wish they're like, I wish I could be here and stuff like that. And like people don't realize like what we actually go through as like military members and how hard it is on us. Like it's hard just being away from your immediate family and like your close friends, and then you get thrown into like a mix where you make new friends, and like you don't have those people you rely on anymore. Like they're a phone call away, but it's not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So
and
it's
I tried to explain it to people too, because like in my case, right, like you said, your 5 buddies, like think about this, like I'm on base number 5, right? And I have people from, and it's a short amount of time, right? 6 going on 7. And I have literal friends from each base that I'm just as close with, you know what I mean, at each spot. And how many goodbyes and how many hellos and how many, I just want to go back home. Like, and it's like, okay, if I want to go back home and I'm in Germany, that's 1,100, you know what I mean, out the gate before I even get home, right? So just to come see, my folks, I'm already paying 1,100. And I don't think, like you said, they'll never understand it. They don't get it, but like it's different, And with me always moving and stuff, I know my folks are always like, man, well, when am I gonna get grandbabies? Blah blah blah, all this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, dude, like, I don't even know if I could even ask that out of a person. You
Yeah.
know, I've been in 6 different locations in 5 years, to include one deployment out of that, right? Like, how do you ask somebody? You know what I mean? It takes a
Yeah.
very strong-willed person, like
Yeah.
you said, to be able to just drop everything and be able to make those sacrifices.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing. Like people, like you were saying, people won't understand unless they're in our shoes. But yeah, just being away from people you rely on all the time, it's hard. And then I'm in a new base. I'm trying to make new friends, but people don't want to be friends with investigators because, in their eyes, even though they're all cops, we're the snitches.
Yeah.
So people don't talk to you much as an investigator. So I'm brand new. I don't really have, like, my best friend is my wife at the time.
Mhm.
Like, that was my best friend. That's who I confided in. That's who I brought everything that was going on. We talked about everything. Like, that's the one person I relied on because that's all we had. We had each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And so being away from that, like, I'm trying to, luckily I met one guy, Austin Moss, met this guy. This guy was my savior going through what I'm about to talk about. So met him. He's supposed to go on that original deployment with me. Me and him both got pulled, but me and him clicked. He's Arkansas boy. He's another Southern boy. Me and him
Yeah.
we got each other. Like, we knew what we're the same person just about. But uh, we went through that Holloman thing. But after Christmas rolled around and it became New Year's, this is when I hit probably the lowest I've ever been in my life. So coming, I was getting off shift, and my wife, she had just got back into town, and once she got back into Clovis, I was planning on, so we were lucky enough to be able to go back and forth from Clovis to Holloman. It's like a 3-hour drive. So they allowed us to be able to go back when we had off days. So we worked three and threes, 12-hour shifts, and I was working mids. So it was like midnight to noon. Weirdest schedule ever. So I was working midnight to noon, and I was getting off. I was on my third day, and I was about to get 3 days off, and I was about to drive back down to Clovis, and I get a FaceTime, or I get a text message from my wife saying that she wants to talk. Right. So I was like, yeah, like, let me finish. And I'm in the camp with the refugees, and I was like, yeah, let me step away real quick, and I'll FaceTime you. FaceTime her, and this is the worst FaceTime I probably will ever get in my life. She told me she wanted a divorce. So going through that this was, to me, this was out of left field. I had no idea what was going on. Like, I was trying to console her, like, ask her these questions, like, where is this coming from? Like, I don't understand. Like when I left, you like cried in my arms because I was leaving, and now I was just on FaceTime with you like a few days ago with your parents, like your family, and for Christmas. Like, where's this coming from?
Yeah, completely
So
shocked. Right.
yeah, I was completely out of left field. So I drive back, and I still drive back, try to see what's going on, see if I can try to figure out something to fix this, right? So going through that, uh, tried to figure it out, still couldn't figure it out. Uh, Spent 3 days back in Clovis trying to figure it out, trying to help. And she was dead set, dude. She was dead set on that decision. There's nothing I could do to fix. And worst thing is I have to go back to home
Yeah.
after trying to deal with all this stuff and try to figure things out. And I had no idea what to do. I called my supervisor, my NCOIC of the investigation section, and like told him what was going on, and he was completely blown away too. And a few days later, I got pulled back from that deployment, and they pulled me back, and they're like, just try to fix it, man. Just try to do what you can to fix it. So, like I say to everybody, I'm not a perfect person. Our relationship wasn't perfect, by no means. Neither one of us were perfect, but no matter what, giving up on her was never a question in my mind, right? So at that moment when I got back, my sole plan and my sole purpose was try to figure it out and fight and try to fix this, whatever's going on, try to fix it. So going through that, I wasn't able to, obviously. This was probably, so we spent like a month moving stuff out of the house. I ended up moving all of her stuff out first and getting her in her place situated before I situated myself. And we kind of like, at that point, that's when we started. I was still pressing and trying to fix things, and she was like, all that fighting and all that like wanting to fix things, that I think pushed her away even more. And at that point, it got to a point where she wanted nothing to do with me. Like she didn't want to be with me anymore. She was trying to tell me that, and basically I wouldn't listen. Like I was always taught, if you want something, you believe in something, you fight for it, right?
For sure.
So, and that's what I was trying to do, and it just pushed her away more. So that's about the time where, after I realized that, that's when I was like, okay, well, this is time to let this go. And I did. And she ended up palace chasing out of the military. She's guard. She moved back home, so where she's from. And this has probably been the hardest. Going through that was probably the hardest thing I've ever been through. There's this thing. It's the grief cycle. So I still go through it till this day. So number one is denial. So going through that denial phase, like, this can't be true. This isn't happening. Like, she was just with me the other day. Like, how is this happening? Like, I definitely went through that. Like, you go through that mentally. You're like, God, like what? Like, how is this happening? How is this even true? Like, you feel like you're in a nightmare, right? And I definitely did. And there's a point where I was like going in a spiral, just a downward spiral, like, because at that point I had nobody. I didn't have friends here. She had friends here, and when we would hang out with people, it would be those friends. So after I lost her, like, I had nobody. Like, I had the people that I had were phone calls away. They weren't immediately here.
No, for sure.
So I had people checking in on me for sure, and I appreciate all those people who did.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I hit you up a couple of times because, dude, that stuff is rough. And I've never been married, but I mean, I went through 2020 with like a breakup that was like pretty bad, and not bad as in like how it ended, but like you said, man, like I don't think just in general people don't realize, especially like as a man, like you put a lot of time and effort into something, and for it to just automatically, disappear like that. It doesn't just like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I'm good. Like, like it's just not like that.
Yeah. And like I said, I still go through it. I'm not the same person I was at the beginning. I can tell you that right now, I'm not, but I still have my days where I still get affected by it. Like, because there were days where I would wake up, like, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. And when I would sleep, I'd go to bed angry and I'd wake up angry. And it just got to that point. Like, you just get so tired, right? You get so
Yeah.
tired, you're working all the time. Like my job's not easy either. Like we're constantly slammed
Yeah.
with work, but and then I'm going home and I'm battling like my mental health. Like I can't even sit in a room. Like I'm sitting on couches that she used to be beside me in. Like
Yeah.
I'm watching the TV she used to watch with me. Like I'm those are the things that are going through your mind. Like and you
Yeah.
start to blame yourself, right? You start to blame yourself. I was always angry. Like if I would have done this different, this wouldn't have happened. Or you start thinking like that. And it got so bad. Like I wasn't really like drinking a lot. I wasn't like into the substance abuse. There were times where I was, and when I did dabble in it, I
Yeah.
I did. And it got to the point where you start thinking about like not want to be here anymore, right? You're
Hmm.
tired of all the pain, you're tired of all the insecurities, you're tired of blaming yourself, you're just tired of everything, and you just want it to end. And you kind of fall back on that, right? Like you think that's the only way out of it. And I tell you, I did. I contemplated it. I actually that was the first time I've actually thought about taking my own life. And if it wasn't for I this is one thing I push the brand. It's musicians, like
Yeah.
because music has saved my life. Music has literally saved my life. And there's a song called Save Me because I was just at that point and I typed it in Spotify, I typed in Save Me, and there's a song by an artist named Jelly Roll. He's like a country, like a Western, like rapper
Yeah.
style. And that song literally, I was like, this isn't it. This isn't what I was put on this earth for, to end it right here. Like that's a temporary action for a permanent action. That's it wasn't it. So that at that point, that's when I kind of like started like I got to turn around. Like I can't. And that's when that Holloman group ended up coming back. And Moss, my buddy that I met over there, that
Yeah.
we became good friends. He came over and we we shared. That's like I needed that comfort. I needed that conversation. Uh, we sipped on a bottle of whiskey and we kind of because he kind of went through the same thing I did. He was overseas too. He was in Spain. He went through a similar situation, and we just sat there and cried to each other, man. Like it was like I was being strong for so long, and I finally let it out at that moment. And after that, that's when I was like, this is when the recovery process starts right here. This is the day. So
For sure. And I think one of the things, man, and I think as men we don't realize is like obviously you can't trust anybody. I mean everyone, right? And you don't want to
yeah,
like just say just whatever to anybody, but with somebody like that, like you said, like your buddy, it's like that stuff's so important because the more and more you shove it under the table, the worse and worse it's gonna get when it comes to the surface. And
hmm
you really gotta attack your grief like it's a job. You know,
yeah,
not because you want to get over it really quickly, but so you could be in it and you can feel it. So it doesn't drag. Obviously, it's gonna take time regardless, right? But it doesn't drag along. But my question to that would be okay, so both of y'all went through a similar situation. What would your advice be to people that maybe this has happened to, right? And is going through a divorce or struggling in a marriage? What is something that you would what would be something you would give them to be able to maybe deal with that kind of stuff?
yeah. So what I like to, because I like to see myself as like a resilient type person, right? Like I'm good at overcoming things. It might take a little bit longer, but I will eventually overcome it. And biggest thing is seek help. Seek help before it's too late. I definitely ended up doing it. I was seeing they're called True North in our unit, and they're in flax. So people
Mm-hmm.
who don't know, they're military life counselors, and they deal with stuff like this. And I definitely, after that night, I scheduled, and I was going to see them. It's you need to talk about it. Like, you can't just bottle it up. Like, anybody who can tell you, my ex-wife could tell you, man, like, I this is how I was raised. You don't show emotion, you don't show weakness. If you complain to yourself and keep moving. So it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to grieve. Uh, Talk about it. Don't be scared to share your feelings. That's one thing I've really learned and really worked on. Like, talk about it.
And I
Grief.
sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
And
you're good. Go.
I was gonna say, sorry, the sickness got to me. But thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, because I think that a lot of times, one is one reason why I like to do this podcast, and two, I think moving a lot and being around all these different people, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
from all over the United States or even like, you know, other countries and stuff, like as men, people just most of us are raised to be like, you know, tough and just hard, which is good, right? But the most toughest dudes that I've ever met in my life are were the most vulnerable people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't realize that until, you know, you mature and you get around people who really teach you things and really show you, hey, man, you want to be a real man? Like, you know what I mean? Talk about those things, you know? You don't have to talk about them to the world, but
Yeah.
if you just try to be, you know, Billy Badass and get everything done yourself, you're gonna bring yourself into the ground, you know?
Yeah, and that's as true as it comes right there. I've had going through this entire process, I've had peers say that they looked up to me and they never saw me, like, they would have never guessed anything was wrong with me, or that I was ever going through a divorce, or that I was ever contemplating taking my life, or that I'd go home and just cry, just sit there
Yeah.
and cry because I didn't know what else to do. Like, I never took that to work with me, and that's the number one thing that I was always told is, like, you hold yourself to a standard, and uh, I look up to you for that. And just hearing that, like, made me want to cry. Like, you don't going like hallways and passing by people, you don't realize like how people actually view you, right? You just
Yeah.
go on about your business, you say hi to them and keep it moving. But like, one thing I want to accomplish as a person, that's to make people remember me for something good that I did to them or towards them. Like, just have
Yeah.
that simple conversation with somebody. Like, say hi to somebody in the hallway when you pass them. Ask them how their day's going. Ask them how they're doing. I didn't do that before. Like, I do that
Yeah.
now because I know what I went through. And some people just need that ear to listen to them, or that shoulder to lean on. And you don't know whose day you're going to make by doing that.
What's the famous saying? People never remember what you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
Always.
Exactly.
And being kind, I don't think people realize how far that could really go in somebody's life. And you're one of the kindest dudes I know, man. And I can't thank you enough for just, you know, sharing what you're sharing. Everyone can't do that, you know, and to be able to, you know, stick your neck out there like that and really, you know, give advice to people that maybe are going through it. And maybe one person that's listening to this, you know, maybe it changes their lives and maybe they don't take their life, you know. And that's how I try to think
Yeah.
about this stuff when I'm doing it. And I also, you know what I mean, can have a great conversation with great people like yourself at the same time. So segueing into that, we talked about mental health and how important that is to you. Now, connecting that to the brand, excuse me, to the brand, Double R Hat Co. Tell me a little bit about how this started. And I know you have like a fundraiser fund, right? To veterans suicide awareness, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm not
That's
mistaken.
that's the one
Talk
thing I try to, yeah, that's the one thing I try to advocate for. Like, you got brands out there, right? And what I'm going to push this brand to be is I want it to mean something to somebody. I don't want it to just be another brand out there that's just making money. I want there to be something behind the brand that means something. So starting out 2020, I think April is when I first released everything or brought it to fruition, right?
Yeah.
So it was an idea. So, coming from West Texas, ball caps with brands on them are everywhere, whether it's like a company name or a logo or something, like it's everywhere out there. So thinking to myself, like I wear all these West Texas companies. Like I don't know if you remember the Pradens, like
Yeah.
people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have their company, like I'm wearing their name, their brand on my hat. Like I have multiple hats like that. You got Hui, you got like hats like that. So I'm like, why can't I why can't I do that for myself? Like why can't I
Yeah.
make something that represents me and where I come from, people like me? And so it was an idea. I tossed it around to my wife. I tossed it around to my buddies. I was like, what do y'all think about this? They're like, why are you what's stopping you from doing that? And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a good point. That's a good point. So I ran with it after that. It took coming up with this. I designed this logo myself. So that took us months and it was ugly at first. It was absolutely ugly because the way I am is like I'll figure it out myself before I ask for help. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing and a bad thing in certain situations. So this situation, I was like, I'll figure it out. And so I wanted something to represent me and my family and what I do for a living. So the two R's that represents me, my grandpa. So mirroring each other, that's someone who I want to be when I grow up. That's someone I admired from the time I was younger. And then the arrow, it could be portrayed as an arrow or a spear. You hear this all the time in the military. We're the tip of the spear. So we're
Yeah.
the first ones in the fight. We signed up to do this job, and we do it with pride. So that represents what I do for a living and how I portray myself and live day to day. So going through that, like I was saying, I don't want it to be just another brand. I want it to be something that represents something that people believe in. Like you got Black Rifle, right? They
Mm-hmm.
bunch of veteran dudes. They they believe in it. They help people who believe in it, and that's what I'd like it to end up being. So what I want to do when I'm done, I want to live on the ranch. I want to own my own ranch, live on it in the middle of nowhere, and not be bothered by anybody. So
Yeah.
what I would like to do with that is tie this brand into that. And there's a company out there that I've been following that I would like to work with, and that I'm going to start doing my donations through because they're a nonprofit, and they're called Bear Hug Cattle Company. They
Okay.
they bring in veterans, so they're all veterans themselves. A majority of them are veterans. The owner of it is a veteran. He's an Army veteran, and he's always wanted to be in the ranching industry. While he was in Georgia, he found somebody who would actually take the time to teach him, and he learned. And he ended up getting out and started this nonprofit. They bring in veterans who are like him, who wanted to be a part of the ranching industry, the cattle industry. They bring them in and teach them. It's like a 10-day crash course. It's kind of like tech school all over again.
Yeah.
They the first few weeks are like horsemanship and saddlery, and they teach them how to saddle a horse and how to rope and stuff like that. Then the last couple weeks, the last 5 weeks is like OJT on the training. They take them around to different ranches around Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, and they get that ranching experience in a real working ranch. So that's one thing I'd like to partner with, and just bring in veterans, uh, allow them to refine themselves. We just like you, I push mental health big because especially now, actually going through it and experiencing it, I know how it is, and it's not a fun place to be. And I want it to be a brand that represents that, and I want to push that awareness because it needs to be, there needs to be a light shined on it.
No, for sure. That's beautiful, man. Very similar to me. I think a year ago, I think what's today? Thursday. So yesterday, a year ago, was my first podcast episode, right? And it was the same exact story, man. I was like thinking about doing this because people are like, "Oh, you're a good talker." You know what I mean? It's like you're very
Yeah,
good with words, and I've
easy to
always
talk to.
and I've always been like able to connect with people, especially when it came to like being a supervisor, right? Because I was just very diverse and like culture, I guess. Being half black, half Mexican. Not that race is that important, but I was just able to stretch myself, you know what I mean, to a layer of understanding when it came to different people for say that maybe others couldn't. So when it came to like starting a podcast, I was asking like, a few of my military buddies, my boy Eddie Gomez, who I was with in Turkey. I was like, hey man, you think I should do this? He's like, yeah, what's stopping you? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, a podcast, you need the equipment, blah, 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 all this stuff. And he's like, dude, who are you gonna know? Like, you know what I mean? I think I was in San Antonio at the time. He
Yeah,
was like, you're not gonna have people coming in, you know what I mean, once a week. You don't know that many people in San Antonio. And I was like, yeah. So what I did, well, I was just like, I'll figure it out. He said, but you just need to start it. I was so focused on like, oh, I gotta buy mics, I gotta do this, I gotta do that.
mm-hmm.
And then I'm on YouTube and I'm like, bro, I could just use Zoom. Then I have a plethora of people that I can use this podcast with. And I just started it with that, man. And like you said, it just takes a little bit of initiative and just like some effort, and
Yeah.
you can do anything you put your mind to.
You just need those risky friends who they're like, just do it, bro, just do it. What's stopping you?
Yeah.
And that's all I needed. I was like, yeah, I guess there's nothing stopping me. Let's do it. But
Yeah, for sure.
I just had a vision and an idea, and they're like, okay, use it. I was like,
Yeah.
cool. You just need that extra push, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure, man. Some validation a little bit. Yeah, man. So that's super awesome, man. It's been great talking to you. We'll have some wrap it up questions. I don't want to take too much of your time. But one of the nice questions I like to I ask everybody on the podcast every episode is, four people, dinner table, dead or alive, who are you taking to
so
dinner?
so when you sent me this, I knew three people right off the bat because
Okay.
these people. So growing up, I had one grandparent that I actually met and built a relationship with, and that's the one who inspired me to do this brand. So he's number one. He's number one. I wish he could see me now. I wish I want to have that beard that I've always wanted to have with him. I just want to pick his brain, and I just want to see. I just want him to see me now, like because I know he'd be proud. He's the first one to teach me how to ride a bike. He's always excited to watch me play ball. So just to see how far I've come and where I am now, I know I'd be proud, and that's all I want to do is make people like that proud. So he's number one. Number two is my mom's grandpa. So I never got to meet him. I never got to have a conversation with him. He got to hold me when I was a baby, and that was the last interaction I had with him. So he passed away shortly after I was born. And same thing, just get to meet him and get to know him as a person. Uh, Number three would be his wife. So my mom's grandma, never got to meet her. She passed away when my mom was in high school. So all I've seen were pictures of her. Uh, Same thing. I'd just like to meet her and get to know her because I've never knew what it was like growing up with grandparents, and that's one thing that I wish I could have had. So, with that being said, those are the three special ones that I would like. The next ones were extremely hard because I had one left. So it was a pick between musicians or athletes.
Okay.
So it was a toss between George Strait and Cody Johnson and Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Okay, that's good. I
So
like that.
yeah, so
It's a coin toss between all four, huh?
it's a coin. Yeah, it's a coin toss between all four. So I wouldn't know who. I'd like to enjoy a dinner with each and every one of them, but I'm gonna leave that for people to debate.
That's pretty awesome, man. I know this is kind of crazy to believe, right? But I think I started doing that question specifically. Like, I think this is episode 22, so 7 podcasts ago, right? So around like 12 to episode 13. And every single person except for one has mentioned a grandparent. Like,
That's
every
awesome.
single person. And
Yeah.
it goes to show, and some of them grandparents that they've met and some that they haven't. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's like, yeah, man, shout out to all the grandparents out there doing the Lord's work. It's pretty awesome, man. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful list. All
I
right. So
agree. I agree.
second question. I know you know a lot of great people out there. If there's anybody that you would like to see on this podcast who has an interesting story, incredible story, who would that be?
I think that'd be my good buddy Bradley Marquez. I'm actually
Oh,
going down.
yes.
I'm actually going down this weekend to help with his football camp. He asked me to join in and help again, so I'm honored every time he asks me. Uh, for y'all who don't know, he's the Odessa High hero right there. He got drafted for pro football, NFL. Got drafted out of high school to play baseball. I feel like he has an incredible story. He's one of my best friends growing up. I know he has some great sports stories that I've heard. So I feel like he'd be a good addition to this podcast.
Yes, man, that'd be awesome. I know he gave me his number a few years back. I don't know if it ever changed, but if not, you're gonna have to help me get him on, man, because I know he has a lot of great knowledge and a plethora of
Oh yeah,
stories, like you said, to be able to share. And it's just cool to be able
yeah,
to get that kind of stuff out there, you know.
yeah. I agree.
Well, that's awesome, man. Before I let you go, man, is there any questions you have for me? I know you did majority of the talking, and you know I'm here as a listener, just and a fan of yours, man, and everything you do. Is there any questions you think you have for me that I might be able to answer?
What is your end goal for this podcast? So what would you like to see this in a few years?
My end goal for this podcast. I think with this podcast, I definitely haven't been consistent enough. So that's the first thing is to start with
Mm-hmm.
that. And my end goal is just to keep it growing. I know I should set like an actual value of like where I would want to be, but I just got, you know, in a new AFSC and I'm still learning all this stuff. I didn't make tech, unfortunate, right?
That's all right.
I found out today didn't make tech.
Yeah, those percentages were crazy. So
Yeah,
no harm, no foul, man.
but I really, as much as it sounds, as I mean crazy as it sounds, is I really want this podcast just to be attached to great people. And what I mean by that is obviously your company. My boy Jordan Irizarry, he's when I say like the best as far as like I've seen when it comes to personal training, like I've seen him change people's lives, you know.
Yeah.
And just things like that, other mental health, you know, uh pathways and roadways. Like for example, I believe episode 10, there was 4 prior SF guys, not special forces, security forces. They're rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, right? In like not in a military thing, but in support of military suicide awareness.
Yeah.
For like it's kind of like an Everest thing. Their brand is like
yeah.
fight or die. They got a sponsor from a car dealership for 100K, and they're rowing on a rowboat from Antigua all the way to Spain across the whole Atlantic Ocean. You know, and and they're not like studs. Like I love them to death, right? But they're just these normal dudes. There's these normal dudes who you know what I mean, who believe in something. So
Yeah.
with the podcast and stuff, it fires me up just to be able to, you know, maybe get one more audience member, you know what I mean? Just another person. And obviously, again, attach those great brands like yours who are putting money into, you know, nonprofits and people that are actually making an impact in other people's lives that make a difference, you know? So yeah, man. I wish I had a more like lucrative, like this is where I wanted to go, but where it's at right now is all right with me, and I'm just gonna keep working at it.
Yeah. Eventually they'll get there, man. That's if I 2 years ago when I started this business, if I would have told you where I'd be right now, I would think you're crazy. The people who represent it, wear it, like it's still crazy to me to see people wear it. Like when it goes from music artists to influencers on social media who reach out who want to wear it, like it still blows my mind. It still
Yeah,
blows my mind
and
that
that
people
that
are wearing it.
that's a kudos to you, man. How genuine you are, and what it represents, and who you represent. So again, kudos to you, and thank you for sharing. You know, all that you shared throughout this podcast, and we appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad I was finally to get on here.
I know, man. It's been a long time coming. All right, then,
For sure.
everybody, make sure y'all go and hit up Double R Hack Company. Um, that's the same as your Instagram, right?
Yeah, Double R Hat Co on Instagram, doublerhatco.com. That's the website. The website is in the bio of the Instagram if y'all want to check it out.
Already. And if you want to influence like me, because I'm a Double R Hack Co influencer, please feel free. I know you can do it through the website, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
there's information on the website. There's a thing you can fill out, or you can hit me up on Instagram. That's how most people have been doing it. So just let me know.
Oh snap! Yeah, for sure, man. Well, again, thank you, dude. I really appreciate it, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to drop this probably tomorrow. Just so I'm gonna make sure the edits are fine and dandy. Sounds good.
Sounds good for me, man.
Alrighty, brother. You take care, man. God bless. If you ever need anything, please hit me up. I'm just a phone
Yes,
call
sir.
away.
Yes,
Alrighty.
sir. Same, man. Same.
Alrighty. Thank you guys for listening. Y'all take care.